It was supposed to be an ordinary day for the Galactic Council's engineers. They had developed a grand star stabilizing station, one that was supposed to be flawless, indestructible, and entirely beyond human comprehension. The Council boasted that nothing could possibly go wrong with such a sophisticated design. But then, an error struck, a small malfunction cascading into a devastating system-wide failure. Alarms blared, lights flashed, and every protocol manual the aliens had carefully crafted proved useless. Engineers and scientists scrambled, desperately running diagnostics, but the problem only grew worse. Panic spread through the station's corridors, each species of alien displaying their own unique reactions of confusion and distress. And just when the chaos was reaching a fever pitch, a human entered the room. Not with the typical over-preparedness the Council expected, but with a coffee mug in one hand and a roll of duct tape dangling from the other. Aliens turned in stunned silence, their eyes wide with disbelief. Who was this human, and why did they look so calm? Without missing a beat, the humans simply sipped their coffee, surveyed the chaotic scene, and muttered, "Looks like a Monday." A few aliens fainted in shock, but little did they know they were about to witness a display of resourcefulness they'd never forget. The Galactic Council's briefing room buzzed with tension as the assembled alien officers reviewed the situation. Screens displayed the star stabilizing station's many systems, all showing flashing red alerts and cascading error messages. Each officer, representing a unique and highly intellectual species, wore an expression of restrained panic. To say they were underprepared would be an understatement. This was the most sophisticated piece of technology they'd ever developed. No human had even seen it, let alone been expected to fix it. But now, facing an imminent meltdown and running out of options, they had no choice but to call in their last hope, a human engineer. The alien officials exchanged skeptical looks. As far as they were concerned, humans were strange creatures, oddly attached to primitive technologies and habits. They had heard wild rumors about human ingenuity, but could hardly believe that any species that relied so heavily on coffee could be taken seriously. Whispers broke out across the room. "Are they really sending one of those humans?" an officer muttered, his voice thick with disbelief. "I heard they used duct tape to fix everything. Surely this is a mistake." Another alien, with a shimmering blue crest and an air of intellectual superiority, scoffed, "Duct tape? That's preposterous. Surely they'll come with proper equipment." "No," a third alien interjected with a grim expression. "According to the report, humans have an odd habit of carrying minimal tools. They use improvisation." The room went silent. Improvisation was a foreign concept here. Aliens preferred meticulous planning, detailed procedures, and highly regulated protocols. Improvisation was for the disorganized, the reckless, and certainly not suited to a task of this magnitude. An alien technician with pale green skin and several eyes finally spoke up. "I also heard that they don't even power down their machines properly when leaving a workspace. They just shut everything off instantly. No protocols, just off." He paused, looking horrified at the thought. "It's like they enjoy chaos." Another chimed in. "I read that they consume something called coffee, a hot, dark liquid, daily to stay awake and alert. They don't even plug into a recharging station. They just keep drinking this coffee stuff." Yet another alien piped up. "Yes, they're also known to perform maintenance while eating." She cringed. The idea of crumbs inside delicate machinery. The skepticism hung thick in the air as the human engineer entered. She was wearing what the aliens could only assume was standard human attire, a plain jumpsuit with a few odd stains, and a coffee mug that seemed to be a permanent fixture in her hand. A few officers grimaced at the sight of it, noting that the coffee mug was old, chipped, and worn, like it had been through dozens of crises. The human surveyed the blinking screens, took another sip, and cracked a slight smile. "All right, what seems to be the problem?" A silence fell as the alien engineers, used to elaborate technical introductions, hesitated. The alien technician finally replied, stumbling over the simplicity of her approach. The station's main reactor core is destabilizing. Protocol states we require a triple-phase diagnostic recalibration, followed by a complete manual override." The human nodded, unimpressed. "Reactor core, got it. But no time for a full recalibration, right? Just point me to the console. Several aliens exchanged worried glances. One high-ranking officer with a firm and solemn voice stepped forward. I don't think you understand. This is an emergency of the highest order. The calculations, the diagnostics, none of this is trivial. A misstep could lead to catastrophic failure. The human tilted her head, shrugged, and muttered, So, business as usual then. The aliens were speechless, struggling to understand how any species could view this disaster so casually. One alien scientist dared to speak, asking cautiously, Do you require specialized tools? The human gave a lopsided grin, holding up her duct tape. I've got my tools right here. The room filled with murmurs of disbelief. Duct tape? Was this some kind of elaborate human joke? Duct tape? Another alien repeated in a whisper, eyes wide. Are we truly expected to rely on an adhesive strip? The human chuckled. Trust me, we've been saving the universe with this stuff for centuries. Now, let's get this station back online before we all end up floating home. The aliens watched in a mixture of horror and awe as the human stepped up to the console, coffee in one hand, duct tape in the other. None of their protocols had prepared them for this, and yet, as they saw the calm confidence in her eyes, a faint glimmer of hope began to take root in their minds. Perhaps, just perhaps, this human had something they didn't understand, something that might actually work. She set her coffee mug down right next to the delicate machinery, a sight that made the aliens collectively gasp. One of the aliens, a senior technician with a distinctly jittery temperament, reached out instinctively, pointing to the mug. Excuse me, he stammered, but fluids near the console? Our protocols strictly forbid any liquids within proximity of sensitive equipment. The human glanced at her mug, shrugged, and grinned. Oh, this old thing? Don't worry, it's a part of the process. She took a leisurely sip, completely unfazed by the alien's horror. Besides, I need to stay alert. You guys have a lot of flashing lights in here. The alien technician tried to respond, but found himself speechless, a strange twitch in one of his eyes as he stared at the mug. Another alien with long, slender limbs and an air of meticulous precision couldn't help but ask, Is that duct tape on your belt? The human gave her roll of duct tape a little pat, as though it were an old friend. Yep, you'd be surprised how often this stuff comes in handy. The aliens exchanged a series of nervous glances. One finally asked, voice trembling, That can't possibly be safe? The human smirked. Safe? Nah. Effective? Absolutely. There was a hushed silence in the room as the human began her work. She was poking around wires, casually lifting panels, and occasionally muttering things like, Well, that's new, or I've seen worse in my garage. To the aliens, her every move seemed reckless, bordering on chaotic. To her, this was just another day at work. At one point, she found a loose wire that seemed to be causing a minor feedback loop. Without hesitation, she reached into her belt and pulled out her duct tape, securing it with a few quick wraps. The aliens gasped in horror. Did she just use duct tape on the main power conduit? One whispered, clutching at their collar. Another alien, barely able to process what he was seeing, muttered, This is madness. A crude adhesive has no place on this console. One brave alien technician stepped forward, still wide-eyed, but unable to contain his curiosity. Are you sure that's a viable solution? I mean, by our standards, such methods are unsound. The human simply grinned and patted the console with a reassuring slap. Duct tape's practically a miracle worker, buddy. You'd be surprised at what it can hold together. The alien technician blinked, his brain struggling to process this unconventional wisdom. But in our training, we're taught that structural integrity requires, Look, sometimes things just need a bit of patching up, the human interrupted, shrugging. You all have protocols and fancy gadgets, and that's fine. But sometimes you gotta roll up your sleeves, trust a bit of intuition, and throw in a little tape, or a lot of it. She raised her mug as if making a toast to duct tape. While the human continued her work, a curious alien observer dared to approach, watching her with fascination. Excuse me, he began, cautious yet intrigued. I've heard that humans improvise. Is this how you approach all emergencies? The human chuckled. Pretty much. You never know what's going to work until you try, right? Besides, improvising is fun. The alien's expression was one of utter disbelief. Fun? This situation is catastrophic. Sure, but stressing won't fix it, the human replied matter-of-factly. She looked at him with a knowing smile. Sometimes the best solutions come from thinking outside the box. The alien blinked, then looked around at his colleagues, as if to confirm he wasn't the only one baffled by her nonchalance. He leaned in closer, almost whispering, and, "Do all humans handle crises this way?" "Oh yeah, we're practically born for it," she said with a grin. "It's not like we have manuals for every little thing. We just make do. Comes with practice, and a little caffeine." The aliens looked at each other, digesting this new concept with a mixture of awe and horror. In their highly regulated world, they'd never considered that making do could be an option. But here was this human, tackling what was essentially a galactic catastrophe with duct tape, a coffee mug, and a calm demeanor that left them all speechless. Several aliens began furiously taking notes. Note to self: human crisis management strategy, duct tape, caffeine, and improvisation, one muttered, unsure if this was genuine wisdom or complete insanity. As the human continued her unconventional repairs, an alien with a strict adherence to protocol finally lost his composure. "But you can't just do whatever you want. There are standards, procedures, regulations." The human just chuckled. "Look, buddy, sometimes you gotta break a few rules to get things done." She gestured to the flashing screens. "You want this fixed or not?" The alien fell silent, his mouth hanging open, words failing him. He couldn't comprehend it, but he felt something strange, a glimmer of hope. Could this chaotic human actually pull this off? The human engineer continued her repairs, tapping into systems that the aliens had deemed far too sensitive for manual interaction. The aliens, who preferred strictly regulated methods and pristine equipment, were horrified as they watched her handle their advanced machinery with what looked like reckless abandon. "Uh-oh," the human muttered, staring at a rapidly blinking light on the console. "Looks like this wire's about to give out." Without a moment's hesitation, she dug into her belt and pulled out a paperclip. A chorus of shocked whispers swept through the room. "Is that a primitive fastening device?" one alien gasped. "Oh, it's more than that," the human replied with a wink. "Paperclips are multi-purpose. This baby's going to keep your system running for a bit longer." She twisted the clip, securing it to a loose connection with surprising finesse. The blinking light steadied, and the system hummed quietly to life. An alien engineer, visibly panicked, exclaimed, But that's not a certified tool. That could compromise the entire stabilization system." The human just grinned. "Certified or not, it's holding, isn't it?" The aliens exchanged glances, their disbelief reaching new heights. Another alien, driven by a strange mix of curiosity and desperation, asked, "Do all humans use random objects for repairs?" The human chuckled. "Oh yeah, you'd be amazed at what a rubber band, a bit of chewing gum, or even a shoelace can do. If it fits, it works." The alien technician shook his head in utter disbelief. "Our protocols involve years of research and meticulously calibrated instruments, and you're telling us a paperclip can achieve the same result? Well," the human shrugged, "it might not look fancy, but it gets the job done." Just as the aliens were beginning to process this idea, a new alert sounded. A red light flashed on the console, signaling an escalating issue in the station's coolant systems. The alien engineers began to panic, shouting over each other in confusion. "We need to initiate an emergency shutdown," one alien cried. "No, that will take the reactor offline and the star could destabilize," another shouted back. The human took a calm sip of her coffee. "Relax, guys, we don't need a full shutdown. Let's just, reroute the coolant manually." The aliens gaped at her. "Manually? That would take precise calibrations and several hours of intense coding." "Nah," she replied, cracking her knuckles. "I've got a faster way." Without waiting for permission, she opened a maintenance panel, revealing a tangle of wires that even the alien engineers hadn't dared touch. She surveyed the setup with a confident grin, pulled out her trusty roll of duct tape, and started patching up connections with an ease that left the aliens speechless. One alien's jaw dropped. "Jaw? Is she taping the coolant system?" Another alien, shaking his head in amazement, whispered, We're doomed." Just then, the coolant system stabilized, and the alert lights blinked off. The human closed the panel, dusted off her hands, and looked at the stunned crowd of aliens. "See? Easy fix." The alien leader, whose face had turned a peculiar shade of green, sputtered, You could have jeopardized the entire system." The human shrugged, clearly unbothered. Sometimes you gotta take a risk to get results. Several aliens were furiously jotting down notes, muttering phrases like human risk tolerance dangerously high and possible new protocol, duct tape for emergencies. Another alert popped up on a different screen, this time indicating a power surge in one of the stabilization reactors. The aliens gasped, their fear rising to a palpable level. One of the senior engineers, trembling, pointed to the screen. That surge could create a feedback loop. It could destabilize the entire station. But the human just nodded calmly. "Yep, that's definitely a problem." She looked around, eyes twinkling with a strange delight. "Anyone got a rubber band?" The aliens froze, utterly at a loss for words. A rubber band. Realizing no one was moving, she sighed and reached into her pocket, pulling out a single rubber band. She twisted it into place around a section of exposed wiring, securing a temporary buffer that effectively absorbed the excess charge. The alert disappeared and the system stabilized. One alien's eyes widened, a mixture of terror and awe spreading across his face. How did you know that would work?" The human shrugged, tossing the rubber band back into her pocket. "Didn't know for sure, but figured it was worth a shot. Usually works back on Earth." The alien leader, who was beginning to resemble someone on the verge of a meltdown himself, stammered, "You didn't know?" The human gave him a calm smile. "That's the thing about fixing problems. You can't always play it safe. Sometimes you just have to go with what you've got." The aliens stared in stunned silence, processing this radically unorthodox approach. For them, every aspect of problem-solving involved meticulous planning, extensive simulations, and strict adherence to protocol. Yet here was this human, navigating catastrophe with little more than intuition and a handful of random items. One alien, clearly struggling to reconcile his training with what he was witnessing, finally spoke up. "Human, don't you fear failure? These are life-or-death situations." The human simply shrugged, a laid-back smile on her face. "Fear's just a distraction. If I spent all my time worrying, nothing would get done. Besides, duct tapes never failed me before." She raised her coffee mug in a mock toast to the startled room. For a moment, the aliens were silent, as though they were absorbing a new law of the universe. Then, one by one, they began to nod, tentatively, almost in reverence. Maybe, just maybe, there was some wisdom in this madness. As they collectively stared at her in awe, another alien whispered to his companion, Perhaps we should incorporate duct tape into our emergency kits." The companion, still shocked, nodded slowly. "And maybe we should reconsider our protocols, at least for crisis situations." The human chuckled, overhearing. "That's the spirit. Now, who wants to help me with the main reactor?" The alien team, still stunned but somehow emboldened by her confidence, exchanged glances. Despite their reservations, they found themselves strangely inspired. With a few hesitant nods, they followed her lead, ready to see just how far this human approach could take them. As the human wrapped up her unconventional repairs, the alien stood in a stunned silence. What they had just witnessed defied everything they'd been taught about engineering, safety protocols, and problem-solving. The alien leader, his face still a shade paler than usual, took a deep, steadying breath. "So, it worked. You stabilized the station with duct tape. And a paperclip." The human gave a casual nod, as though it were the most natural thing in the galaxy. "Yep, pretty straightforward stuff." She took a leisurely sip of her coffee, clearly unfazed by the ordeal. One of the alien engineers, who had been meticulously documenting every bizarre tool she'd used, raised a trembling hand. "Excuse me, human. I must ask, how is it that humans approach problems in this way, with random objects and an almost reckless disregard for regulation?" The human smirked, a glint of amusement in her eyes. "Well, where's the fun in following all the rules? Sometimes you've just got to go with what's in front of you and make it work." The alien engineer nodded slowly, trying to process this alien to him concept. So you embrace unpredictability? But our civilization has thrived on predictability and strict order. To trust in randomness feels chaotic? The human offered, shrugging. Maybe a little, but chaos is where we thrive. We're pretty good at turning disaster into opportunity. Improvisation is practically in our DNA. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. Improvisation. It sounded like madness, but they couldn't deny that it had worked. This human had saved their station, defied their protocols, and left them questioning everything they thought they knew. One alien, his face a mask of disbelief, whispered to his colleague, "Is it possible that our methods, our reliance on procedure, could be holding us back?" The colleague frowned, visibly shaken. "Impossible. Our ways have guided us for millennia, but—" He looked over at the human, who was now casually inspecting her duct tape as if it held all the answers to the universe. "But maybe there's something to this human approach, something we're missing." Another alien who had spent his entire career perfecting complex algorithms and intricate safety measures shook his head in disbelief. "All of our data, our simulations, they never accounted for this. Duct tape was not in any of our contingency plans." The human chuckled, overhearing the comment. "Well, maybe it should be. Think of it as universal problem-solving insurance." A murmur spread through the group as the aliens considered this. Duct tape as insurance? It was absurd. And yet, as they reviewed the recent events in their minds, they couldn't help but see the appeal of this universal solution. The alien leader, whose expression had softened from shock to a kind of philosophical curiosity, addressed the human directly. "Tell me, human, if duct tape and coffee can save an entire station, what else can humans do that we cannot comprehend?" The human shrugged, smiling slightly. "It's not really about the tools. It's about how you use them. We humans aren't afraid to try, to fail, and then to try again. Sometimes that means finding unexpected solutions. Sometimes it means making a mess and fixing it along the way, but in the end, it's that adaptability that gets us through." The aliens absorbed her words, their usual certainties beginning to crumble. One alien, wide-eyed and contemplative, muttered to himself, "Adaptability. We've always seen it as a weakness, a sign of a species without proper control. But perhaps it is a strength." Another alien, visibly distressed, muttered, "If humans can succeed with these haphazard methods, then what does that mean for us? Have we been overthinking everything?" The room fell silent as the question hung in the air. For a species that prided itself on precision, order, and absolute control, this idea of improvisation and adaptability was revolutionary and terrifying. The human, sensing the existential crisis brewing among her alien colleagues, took a long sip of her coffee. "Look, I'm not saying you all need to abandon your ways, but maybe, just maybe, you could try loosening up a bit. Sometimes not everything needs a manual. Sometimes all you need is a little creativity, and maybe some duct tape." The alien leader, his gaze fixed thoughtfully on the human, finally nodded. "You may be correct. Perhaps there is a place for improvisation in our future." One alien, still skeptical but clearly shaken, asked, "But what if it fails? What if our entire way of life collapses because of an improvisational error?" The human grinned. "Failure's just part of the journey. You learn, you adapt, you get back up. That's what makes us human." She held up her coffee mug in a mock toast to duct tape, coffee, and trying new things. A few of the aliens hesitantly raised their own cups, joining her in the toast. It felt odd, even uncomfortable, but somehow right. As they took part in this strange human ritual, the alien leader spoke quietly to himself. "We always believed humans were chaotic, unsophisticated, but perhaps in their unpredictability there is a kind of wisdom, one that we could learn from." Several aliens nodded, their faces a mix of confusion and dawning realization. Maybe they didn't fully understand this human, or why she chose to handle crises with such apparent recklessness, but they couldn't deny the results. For the first time, they wondered if maybe there was more to the humans than they had thought. One by one, the alien engineers left the room, each of them lost in thought, already questioning the rigid protocols they'd held as sacred. The human's words echoed in their minds. Sometimes all you need is a little creativity and maybe some duct tape. In the silent corridors of the station, the aliens began to imagine a future where their lives were a little less certain, a little more adaptable, and perhaps, just perhaps, a little more human. Just as the aliens were coming to terms with the humans' methods, a new alert blared through the control room. A series of red warning lights flashed, illuminating the tense faces of the alien engineers. One of the senior officers, visibly rattled, pointed to the console. "The reactor core is overheating. It's reaching critical mass." The alien leader's face paled. "If it goes, the entire station will be obliterated, along with half of the nearby solar system." The human frowned, her usual calm momentarily giving way to concentration. "All right, then. Looks like we're doing this the hard way." She glanced around the room, her gaze sharp. "Everyone ready to get their hands a little dirty?" The alien technicians exchanged uneasy looks. "But we're not trained for this kind of improvisation," one stammered. The human rolled her eyes, gesturing for them to join her by the reactor's control panel. "Look, if we follow every single protocol, we'll run out of time. This is a whatever works kind of situation. Trust me." Hesitantly, one by one, the aliens gathered around her, watching her carefully as she assessed the system. With a steady hand, she pulled out her duct tape and began securing a few critical wires that had become unstable. An alien with a slender, quivering tentacle tapped her shoulder. "Are you sure about the tape?" The human chuckled. "It's been holding stuff together for centuries. Now watch and learn." She secured the final piece and stepped back. "All right, we need to redirect power flow away from the reactor to reduce the strain. Anyone got any bright ideas?" Silence fell over the group. The aliens, usually quick to consult manuals or protocols, had no clue how to handle this on the fly. But one alien, an officer with an unusually curious expression, cautiously raised a hand. "Could we bypass the secondary systems and route power directly to the stabilizers?" The human grinned. "Now you're talking. Let's make it happen." Together they began rerouting power, bypassing circuits and stabilizers with a patchwork of human ingenuity and alien technology. At one point, they ran into an issue with a connector that wouldn't reach. The human pulled off one of her shoelaces, using it to secure the cable. An alien technician gaped at the makeshift solution. "A shoelace? This is beyond unconventional," the human winked. "Welcome to the wonderful world of human problem solving." She turned to the rest of the team. "All right, let's get these stabilizers back online. Who's got the backup fuses?" The aliens looked at each other in confusion. "Backup fuses? We don't carry extra parts in here." The human sighed, glancing around for something that might work. Her gaze landed on a small metal plaque displaying the station's name, bolted to the wall. "That'll do," she said, unscrewing the plaque and carefully wedging it in place of the missing fuse. The alien leader stared at her handiwork, visibly astonished. "You're making it up as you go, aren't you?" She grinned. "Absolutely. Now let's get this thing stabilized before it melts down." With a renewed sense of urgency, the team worked together, each alien following her lead with growing confidence. They bypassed more safety systems, rerouted power lines, and in a final daring move, temporarily shut down the entire station's non-essential functions to funnel energy into the cooling units. Just as the reactor's temperature began to stabilize, another system failure occurred, this time in the structural integrity field around the station's core. The protective barrier was flickering, weakening under the strain. One alien technician, eyes wide with panic, cried out, "If that shield fails, the reactor will become completely unstable. Nothing we've done will matter." The human nodded, taking a deep breath. "Okay, no time to waste. We'll need to reinforce it manually." She looked around, thinking quickly. "Do any of you have emergency repair tools?" A few aliens held up delicate-looking instruments, clearly unsure of their effectiveness. The human shook her head, muttering, "Not ideal, but it'll have to do." She knelt beside the shield control panel and began adjusting the field stabilizers, her hands moving rapidly as she improvised a solution. An alien with a particularly nervous disposition muttered, This cannot possibly be standard procedure." The human, grinning as she worked, replied, "It's not. It's better." She handed a roll of duct tape to the nearest alien technician. "Here, tape down any loose wires you see. Just make sure nothing sparks." The alien technician hesitated, but after a moment's pause, took the tape and started securing wires with surprising efficiency. Another alien, inspired, began using the human's shoelace method to reinforce other connections. The human glanced over, nodding approvingly. "Now you're getting it. A little creativity goes a long way." The shield stabilized, and the station's alarms began to quiet. They'd managed to pull it off, but just barely. The alien leader looked at the reactor console, visibly shaken. Is it over?" The human exhaled, relaxing her stance. "For now, yeah, you all did good." She raised her coffee mug in a mock toast, grinning. "To teamwork and good old duct tape." The aliens, many of them still holding pieces of tape, shoelaces, and makeshift fuses, looked at each other with a mix of relief and newfound respect. The alien leader, catching his breath, finally managed a shaky smile. I don't know how you humans do it, but you've shown us a side of problem-solving we've never considered. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach to emergencies." The human chuckled, giving him a playful nudge. "Hey, just remember, next time things start to fall apart, it's not the end of the world. Sometimes a bit of tape and coffee is all you need." As the alien team processed this, an alien technician raised a hesitant hand. Could we perhaps keep the tape? For future crises?" The human grinned, tossing him her roll. "Consider it a gift, and remember, sometimes the simplest tools do the most work." The aliens nodded, each of them holding their newly acquired tools like sacred relics. They had faced the impossible, and against all odds survived, thanks to an unconventional human and her bizarre toolkit. The reactor finally stabilized, and the flashing lights dimmed. The once bustling room fell silent as the alien engineers looked around, absorbing the surreal scene. The station was saved, thanks to duct tape, coffee, a few paper clips, and one determined human. The alien leader, his expression a mix of awe and gratitude, turned to the human. I must admit, we never expected, well, any of this." He gestured to the coffee mug, the duct tape, and the improvised repairs around the room. "You've shown us a new way of thinking, one we never thought possible." The human chuckled, taking a final, victorious sip of her coffee. "Glad I could help. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. You just need a little creativity and a lot of persistence." Several aliens murmured in agreement, nodding slowly. One alien technician, who had initially been horrified at the idea of using duct tape on delicate machinery, clutched the roll of tape she'd been given like a newfound treasure. "I never imagined something so primitive could be so effective." Another alien, who had been skeptical from the start, spoke up. "Perhaps we've been too rigid in our thinking. We rely on complex systems, protocols, but sometimes, perhaps simplicity is the answer." The human smiled warmly, her expression turning a bit more serious. "It's not just about the tools, you know. It's about being willing to try, even if you might fail. We humans learn through trial and error. We don't always get it right the first time, but we keep going." The alien leader nodded thoughtfully. "And it seems that resilience, that willingness to try despite the odds, may be your greatest strength." One of the younger alien technicians, clearly inspired, stepped forward hesitantly. "Human, could you teach us more about these methods, about your way of approaching problems?" The human grinned. "Of course, but be warned, it's a messy process. You'll have to get comfortable with a bit of chaos." The technician's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Chaos, we'll try." A sense of camaraderie filled the room as the aliens processed what they had learned. The humans' unorthodox methods had not only saved the station, but had also opened their minds to new possibilities. For a species that had lived in rigid order for centuries, this was a profound and almost spiritual revelation. The alien leader turned to his team. "Perhaps it's time we revise our protocols. We'll introduce a new approach to crisis management, one that allows for flexibility and improvisation." The aliens nodded, visibly moved by the idea of incorporating these human principles into their own systems. Several of them even glanced down at the tape and small tools they now held with newfound respect. As they prepared to leave, the human glanced around the room, her expression softening. You know, it's funny. I came here just to do a job, but I think I ended up learning something too. You all might follow strict rules, but you're dedicated. And that dedication, that's something worth sticking with. One alien engineer, still clutching a paperclip, asked, "Human, will you come back if we ever need you again?" The human grinned, raising her coffee mug in a toast. "Just give me a call, and keep the coffee warm." The aliens, touched by this sentiment, returned the gesture. The alien leader raised a hand in a salute. "From now on, we'll keep a supply of coffee and duct tape on board, just in case." The room burst into a ripple of laughter, the kind of laughter that only comes after facing down a crisis together and emerging stronger on the other side. As the human turned to leave, a few aliens called out, "Thank you, and long live duct tape." Another alien added, "We'll remember your shoelace trick." The human chuckled, waving goodbye as she stepped out. "Glad to have left my mark. You all take care now. And remember, don't overthink it." With that, the human left the station, her mug in hand and her improvised repairs holding steady. The aliens watched her go, feeling a mix of admiration and awe. They had encountered something they could hardly put into words, a unique resilience, a daring courage, and a spark of creativity that they hadn't even known was possible. Back inside, the alien leader turned to his team, his voice carrying a newfound determination. "From this day forward, we will adapt. We will embrace new ideas and find strength and flexibility. Today, we learned that sometimes the simplest tools and the boldest minds can make all the difference." The team nodded solemnly, each of them feeling changed, as if a door had opened to a new way of thinking. And as they prepared to return to their duties, each alien carried with them a small reminder of their unexpected hero, the human, and her duct tape, her coffee, and her unwavering belief that anything could be fixed. Months had passed since the human's memorable visit to the Galactic Council's star-stabilizing station, but the effects of her influence were far from fading. Across the corridors of the station and beyond, alien engineers and scientists were still buzzing with stories of the human with the duct tape. Her methods, once considered laughably primitive, had sparked a quiet revolution. In a council meeting room filled with high-ranking officials, the alien leader stood before a holographic display, addressing his peers. "We are gathered here today to propose an amendment to our crisis management protocols. We have seen firsthand the value of unconventional approaches and believe there is wisdom in embracing flexibility." One skeptical council member raised a segmented arm, shaking his head. "Are we really to allow improvisation into our procedures and using tape?" The leader smiled, a knowing glint in his eye. "I understand your hesitation. I felt it too. But our recent encounter has shown that sometimes the simplest solutions, however strange, can achieve results beyond what our most advanced tools can manage. And duct tape," he added with a small chuckle, "has proven itself remarkably effective." He gestured to the display, which now showed an official directive. "In cases of emergency, allow field engineers a 5% deviation from standard protocol to explore creative solutions as needed." Murmurs of approval spread through the room. It was a small change, but for a society as rule-bound as theirs, it represented a monumental shift. Meanwhile, back on the station, alien engineers had started carrying their own rolls of duct tape, tucked neatly beside their sophisticated equipment. A few had even adopted coffee breaks as part of their routine, sharing stories about the human and her relaxed yet effective way of solving problems. In one of the engineering bays, two aliens were troubleshooting a minor technical issue. As they debated the merits of various tools, one of them reached for his roll of duct tape with a wry smile. "Perhaps we should try the human way, yes?" The other alien nodded, chuckling. "Indeed, but don't forget the coffee." And on Earth, the human engineer had returned to her regular job, blissfully unaware of the impact she had made across the galaxy. She'd received a small token of appreciation in the mail one day, a meticulously crafted alien coffee mug engraved with the words, "For duct tape and bold solutions." With a grin, she set the mug beside her usual one, raising it as if in a silent toast. It was a reminder that, in her own small way, she had helped bridge the gap between humans and aliens, not through fancy technology or diplomatic feats, but with simple, resourceful solutions that had saved lives and changed perspectives. For the Galactic Council, the lesson was clear. When all else fails, a little bit of duct tape and a lot of creativity might just be the keys to the universe. And so they lived on, aliens and humans alike, bonded by a shared appreciation for the improbable, the impossible, and the undeniably human.